know specifically your how you go about if you would go about to change that part of the Constitution of the right to bear arms. Mr. Devin, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Holy
Yep.
crap. Obviously, I think everybody has the right to bear arms. If you're mentally unstable or if you've created vicious criminal acts, you shouldn't be allowed to bear arms. Again, I'm not a huge SJW liberal on this issue. I definitely believe that law-abiding citizens should have the right to bear arms if they so believe it. And like Bernie Sanders, who I'm repping, there is definitely a huge difference in
10 seconds.
rural guns and urban guns, where obviously guns can be used for hunting and obviously others can be used for crime. I'm not one for huge gun control. Obviously, I'm against banning all assault rifles except concealed weapons. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chandler, same question. 30 seconds.
I actually agree with Devin again on this one, but Trump's plan for the Second Amendment is if you have a mental disease or if you're a former criminal, you have a lot harder time to buy a gun, but the right to bear arms should never be taken away by anybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. This reminds me a little bit back of the debate between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. A lot of agreeing here, so I think that's a good thing.
It's not bad.
Okay, two more questions here. Number 3, President-elect Donald Trump has just indicated that there's a possibility of an arms race with Russia. Mr. Chandler, 30 seconds to give your opinion on Mr. Trump's opinion about the arms race. Go.
So it seems like everybody's flexing their muscles with their nukes right now. I don't think that's the right way necessarily with nuclear bombs, but we should build up our troops. He wanted a strong military. I don't think nuclear weapons are the way to do it. If you just keep building up your nuclear weapons, that button's going to get a lot easier to push, and from either side. So I don't think that's the right way to go. Just build up the troops and not nuclear bombs.
Thank you. Mr. Devin.
The Cold War has ended. I don't believe we should still be in this sort of arms race that will never seem to end, especially against Russia, who's always been our biggest enemy. What I've heard from Trump, especially on the campaign trail, is that he's been one for almost not necessarily aligning himself, but creating a sort of connection between himself and Putin. And if the elections were hacked, he's indeed made those relations known. But we definitely should not be in. I saw that. We definitely should not be in an arms race with Russia. It's not going to end well for anybody. We're the two biggest powers, and it's not going to end well for the entire world.
Thank you.
Can I reply to the Putin-Trump relationship?
The Putin-Trump relationship, 30 seconds. Go
Okay.
and Devin will have a chance to review.
Okay. So everybody's saying that Putin and Trump are getting a little too cozy with each other, and I think keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And plus, Russia's been fighting ISIS a lot in the Middle East, and I think they could team up to fight ISIS in the Middle East and maybe keep it at a business relationship and not a friendly relationship.
Mr. Devin, do you agree or disagree with Chandler's statement?
Obviously, like I said before, we need to make some sort of connections with all countries of the world, especially if they're progressing towards a more peaceful environment for the entire world as a whole. However, I don't believe Putin is going to do that. I believe that Trump and Putin, in some way or another, may have had some sort of connections, not necessarily to hack the elections, but to influence the elections. And when a man who supports Bashar al-Assad in Syria, you're a bad person in my book. He's a terrible person who's done terrible crimes against his own people. Putin should not be, and we shouldn't have any sort of friendly relations with Putin, as he has done nothing to help our world in a more positive direction.
Okay, I'm going to give Chandler one more time to respond to that because there's a disagreement here. Do you have any rebuttal for Mr. Devin?
I don't think Putin's a good guy necessarily. I think he's a smart guy, and we could use a lot of his knowledge on how to fight ISIS with Trump. Trump and like Putin fighting ISIS. So I think just keep it a business relationship, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Back to domestic issues. Recently, President Barack Obama just declared 1.4 million acres for the Bears Ears in Utah as a national monument. His reasoning behind it was to protect sacred grounds. The hard part about that is they have stopped any drilling for natural resources with this national monument. So my question is how can you protect sacred ground if you agree or disagree with this and still provide the opportunity for natural resources to relieve pressure from foreign oil. I can't remember who's next. Devin, you first?
I can't remember.
Well, we'll go Chandler. Chandler first. Yep, 30 seconds. Let's give you a minute on this one.
So wait, what was the actual question?
The actual question is, do you agree or disagree with President Obama, and if so, how would you handle those two things of protecting sacred ground and still providing opportunity to drill for oil to relieve our pressure from foreign oil?
We need to become energy independent, and that's keeping the government's hands off of the U.S. land, especially where the oil is, like for the Dakota pipeline. Everybody's protesting that one. I think they need to either go around it or figure out some way to either strike a deal with the Indians to try to get through it, because we need that oil. We need to become energy independent, and I don't think the government has any right to tell privatized oil companies where they can and can't drill.
So just to be clear, you are definitely against what President Obama did using executive power to set aside Bears Ears.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Devin, 1 minute.
I agree that we have to be energy independent. I believe that's not an argument between me and him. However, when I do agree with Obama's decision to set aside those acres of land because they are sacred, and I'd also would like to ask. Obviously, Obama's not listening, and I'm not very valuable in his eyes.
Sure.
But I would ask for him to make some sort of action with the Dakota Access Pipeline, as it is infringing on Indian territories. And then I also saw a video where workers were completely desecrating a very spiritual and sacred ground, it was a grave site of the Indians there, and that I don't agree with. Obviously, I would like to see any sort of business boom in this country if it's natural resources or oil, but if it comes at an environmental cost and destroying Indian relations, that's not something I'm okay with.
Okay, thank you for your response.
If you're just joining us right now, we're having a debate.
What is this?
Everybody's kind of wondering what we're doing.
Okay, in closing this debate, we'd like to give each candidate an opportunity to ask the other one a question, and then we'll give you a 1 minute closing statement. So, Mr. Devin, do you have a question for Mr. Chandler?
Yeah. Do you believe Trump is the anti-establishment candidate that you voted him to be?
Yeah.
As he's said many things that I believe are pipe dreams, where he wants to drain the swamp when obviously he has an established cabinet positions. He wants to build a wall, even though he's kind of relaxing on that position. And he has so many different things that he promised you in the campaign. Do you think he could fulfill all of those?
Chandler, response, 45 seconds.
Okay, I think he still is the drain the swamp guy. He's not as drain the swamp as everyone hoped he'd be, but this government's all about compromise. And like with the build the wall, he says that they're still gonna build the wall, and there'd be fences in some places. He still wants a wall, but it's all about compromise in this government. And which people are you referring to? They didn't drain the swamp.
With I believe it was the Goldman Sachs man who was appointed one of the leadership positions in the economy, and then there was the ExxonMobil guy who was put in, I believe, the Department of Energy, and then Ben Carson, who was put in,
Secretary of State.
was the Secretary of State, and then Ben Carson as urban housing and development, and he doesn't really have any experience in that field.
Well, he was talking about draining the swamp and not just being loyalists, hiring loyalists on his team. And Rex Tillerson would be great as Secretary of State because he has such great relationships if we want to become energy independent. And of course you got to throw some people who know what they're doing in the government, like Ben Carson. I don't think housing and urban development was a great place for him, but he should have been Surgeon General. But you got to have some people with experience in there, but he's still draining the swamp with most of the people he's picked.
Thank you. Mr. Devin, or Mr. Chandler, your question for Mr. Devin.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you why you think socialism is better than communism.
Why socialism is better than communism?
Yeah.
45 seconds.
Well, like anything, you can be a Republican, but you can be a very different Republican from the other Republican. Socialism comes with it's very vague in its definition, and what I believe in one thing, another socialist could believe in another thing. Obviously, communism, in my view, and as history shows us, always leads to an authoritarian dictatorship, regardless of the circumstances. I believe socialism can truly thrive on the people's backing. They have to vote on certain issues, they have to have more voice in the issues, and they can't have a set of elites telling them what they can and can't do. I'm all for the workers' rights. I'm all for a democratic process, and I don't believe that pure communism truly believes in that. Obviously, communism's entire goal is to abolish the institution of money, and I don't believe that could ever happen. Socialism, in my view, in my definition, can work with capitalism to create a better society.
Thank you. We'll do our closing statements now. You can answer each other's questions a little bit in this closing statement. We'll give you 1 minute. We'll go back to Mr. Rafson, or Mr. Chandler.
Okay, I hope you can hear that. Okay, so I fully support Trump still, and everybody's kind of been off the Trump train a little bit, but I think he's doing a great job so far. He's already made deals to bring back almost 100,000 jobs, and that's only the beginning. If you look at the stock market, he's doing great, and I think this is it's going to be a great 4 years. It's only the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Mr. Devin.
In this time, obviously I don't support Trump, but like many others, I wish him the best to especially unify our divided country in the time that we need it the most. Although I don't agree with pretty much all of his policies, his domestic, his foreign, any sort of policies, I do wish for him to do the best that would ultimately benefit the American people. Hopefully he can throw in some socialism here and there, but who knows. Obviously, I want this country to be unified, regardless if it's a candidate I support or not. But with Trump, I don't truly see that going to happen. And that's just my honest opinion.
Thank you. Well, I just want to thank Mr. Chandler and Mr. Devin for their opinions, their input, and the only statement I have to say is God bless America. I'd like to give these guys a hand.